Well, welcome back to Millers in Motion. It's a little bit of a different kind of video for us. So up until this point, we've pretty much only exclusively been talking about selling our house and our emotions and all of the things that's coming along with buying the RV, getting ready to move into it full time and selling our house. But today we are actually shooting true RV content because it's a crime of opportunity. And this is actually why. It's ironic that we're doing this. Because of that right there. That dreaded sound. So, we are officially under a tornado warning here at the house. We only have about a week left, so we're going to knock on some wood and hope that that doesn't actually mean pretty much anything. But the first question my mom sends me today because of the potential weather in North Texas is, in the event of a tornado, what are you guys going to do after you've moved into the RV full-time and you've sold the house? So, I'm going to go back into the house. I'm going to button up the RV a little bit and let's chat about what we're going to do. And then Lauren's on her way home from work, so as long as she didn't get hung up in any of the storms, we'll also ask her and we'll see how accurate we are, and then we'll come back with you with the final kind of wrapped in pieces. By the way, if it's your first time here, my name is Ryan, my wife is Lauren, and we as a combination are Millers in Motion. It'd mean a lot to us if you hit subscribe and follow along as we journey in selling our house and moving into this Grand Design Solitude 390 RK-R full-time so that we can get out and do more stuff, essentially. So it's a little windy, but this is kind of right in front of the RV looking north and west from our house. And I can tell you that is no bueno. Now, it is moving to the north and east, so that specifically is not going to hit us. Where we want to watch, if I turn around here, is that way. Anything over there is going to come at us, and there's the RV sitting right there. So, that cell right there is actually tornado warned. It is just missing us to the north, so it's hitting just south of, and literally just south of Decatur, Texas. There's also been numerous other tornadoes reported in Jacksboro and other areas. It's spring in Texas. This is what happens. We're actually very used to it. A lot of people freak out over this kind of stuff. They're not used to it, but this is the equivalency of living in Miami and dealing with hurricanes. It's just something you deal with. And so we're used to it. Now, with that being said, we are not used to dealing with it in that.
Prepared for these storms to be quite severe. This supercell, again, circulation now right along 380. Just to the east of Decatur. Now that's probably going to be headed up towards you folks in Slidell.
That's our house right there.
In Slidell, get to your tornado shelters now. Whether that.
All right, who's ready for their little refresher course now? So, if you grew up in Tornado Alley, which is pretty much the central United States, comes down about through Texas down to about Waco or so. It shifts every year. There's obviously tornadoes all over, but there seems to be a higher concentration of them, especially through Kansas and Oklahoma. So, as a reminder to any of you that are not familiar with tornadoes, what you would normally do in a house. So what the weathermen and everybody all the way through grade school, if you live in these areas, tells you is you need to go to the So what everybody tells you need to do is go to a center room of the house. So no exterior rooms, no windows. And if that happens to be a bathroom, then you can actually get in the tub. You're looking for things to anchor to, essentially. If you remember the movie Twister, they anchor to the pipes, and that's how they get through the twister. So that's actually the idea. So if you're near something that has plumbing that goes down to the ground, it has a better chance, that room has a better chance of not coming down if you were to impact a direct hit from a tornado. Secondly, even though the cause of death and injury is a tornado, it's not actually the tornado that kills you. It's the debris that's flying around. And so you have to think to yourself, if the house comes apart and there's wood and shingles and cabinetry and utensils like knives flying in the air, what's going to protect you? That's the general idea. So if you're in a house, that's what you do. Now, our interior room in this house, you've seen it a little bit. By the way, it's getting more and more naked, is actually our master closet. And it's big enough for all three dogs, Lauren and I, to get in there. It gets hot fast and it is not very comfortable. But for 15, 20 minutes, it's perfectly fine, especially for safety's sake. Now, All right, what's the difference in a tornado watch and a tornado warning? A tornado watch, and this is how I was told in grade school, a tornado watch means you should watch out for the potential of one. So that means the conditions are right. Typically those are set hours in front of a storm. So like for instance today, so it's currently 5 o'clock, 5:01 to be precise, here in North Texas. The tornado watch was issued back around like 10 a.m. this morning. All that says is the conditions are right. A tornado warning means there is a cell that they've spotted rotation in. Doesn't mean it's come down or not. So there's rotation, and then there's an actual funnel cloud, and then there's a touchdown, like in football. No, there's a touchdown, which means there's an actual funnel cloud on the ground causing damage. So just because there might not be a touchdown or even a funnel cloud, when typically you get that horizontal rotation, it can get pretty dicey at that point because it can literally any moment it can drop down. And at that point, it's just very unpredictable. My arm's going to sleep. So when you get a tornado warning, that's essentially the sign to potentially take cover. Now, because of how I have my phone set up, we get all county warnings. That warning's for the northern part of the county. It's actually about 50 miles away from us. So we're not in threat. But if you notice in the house, and this is something we just do, something that we've always done in our house is you flip the news on, right? So in flipping the news on, though, we're not on satellite, we're not on cable. We actually have a over-air antenna. We actually have an over-air antenna behind the TV, and we've always had one of those on at least one of our TVs. So in case our internet goes down, which it can, or satellite goes out in storms, we still can get local channels, and that's exactly why we do that. So now obviously in an RV, most of us have some sort of a digital antenna on top, like we have that Winegard Air 360 antenna, so it picks up those channels. We already have that, which is perfect. I actually went out to the rig and made sure that it's got all of our local channels up, and I left one on in the rig just in case I run out there to do something real fast. Yeah, you can see those clouds starting to get a lot closer. Also, the wind's picked up an absolute ton, so I'm getting pretty close to the microphone, so I'm trying not to just scream into it so I don't blow everybody's eardrums out. But yeah, that's not what you want to see. You know, animals are kind of funny because Klondike here doesn't really give two craps about what's going on over there. He really doesn't care. He just wants to lay down outside because he's that dog. He doesn't want to do much. He just wants to kind of hang out outside. That's why he's going to love camping. Mishka, who's staring in the window right there, Bailey is terrified. She doesn't like not being next to me. She's scared. She's on the bed. She's on somewhere else. She is not to be seen. You're not a fan of these, are you, pup? Say, nope, I'm not. Make it go away, Dad. You don't care. You just want kisses. So that's actually our tornado watch and severe. So yellow is severe warning. Red is tornado watch. That little yellow piece right there, oh, it went away. So you can just see how big a tornado watch really is. And again, we live kind of right up in there. All right, so I'm going to apologize for the wind, but typically if you lived in a city, if you fall inside of that red box that says there's a tornado warning, so there's a storm producing a tornado, that's when you would hear tornado sirens. Now, because of where we live, we don't have tornado sirens. Again, we live a little bit out in the country. Wind just picked up again. We live out in the country, so we don't get those. That's why we have the alerts still turned on our phones, and then we just become diligent about checking social media and news organizations. Social media, every area that's covered by the National Weather Service, which there is a version of it somewhere that covers you, has a Twitter account. That's what I found to be the easiest. I go right to the National Weather Service, Fort Worth in this case, and I just follow their Twitter feed, and then they give pretty much minute-by-minute updates as what's going on with different cells. So that's how we get most of our weather data. In fact, I'll have Lauren tell it, but when we first moved into the house, we actually had a tornado scare. Literally skipped right over the top of the neighborhood. So interesting story, but I'll let Lauren tell here in a little bit. So I will continue to document the fun that is all of that. But let's talk a little bit about what happens. Well, let's talk a little bit about what happens when that comes, but you're living in that. So we've done extensive research on this simply because we want to be safe. We're used to tornadoes. Everything at our house is built around safety. So we want to be duplicating that in the rig. But obviously, you heard on the news, if there's a tornado warning, if you live in a mobile home, get out and take shelter. You're not attached to the ground in any way. And if you've ever been in 30, 40 mile an hour winds in your RV, like inside of it, you feel it moving. And so imagine being in 100 mile an hour winds. I mean, it could pick it up, it could dump it over. That's a safety issue for anything living inside. So what are the precautions? first and foremost, when we go to RV parks, if we know that there's inclement weather in the area coming in, we start looking for shelters. So comfort stations, laundry areas, offices, restroom, shower facilities, any of that stuff. Those are all tornado shelters. Anything that's a permanent fixture, especially if it has plumbing, permanent. Now, RV parks, when they give you that little fun sheet, will tell you in the event of inclement weather, please go to here. Now, let's say you're boondocking or you're somewhere else. So, well, if you're at a friend's house, go inside their house. I don't think they were going to mind if you have your RV there already. But you're mooch docking, or you're maybe harvest hosting, or you're boondocking on BLM land out west. You just have to have a plan. I mean, even if that plan is getting in your truck and driving out of the path of the storm early and leaving your rig subject to whatever happens to it. At the end of the day, everything inside of there can be replaced. But I can't be replaced. Lauren can't be replaced. You can't be replaced. Klondike can't. Nothing living wherever Klondike went. Klondike can be replaced. Enjoying this nice warm day. They can all be replaced. Your safety is first and foremost. Get out of the way. Do whatever's best for you, your family, your animals, whatever that happens to be. And it is getting closer. And one thing that I like to point out too is, you can tell it almost is starting to turn green right through there. So that's just rain bands and all kinds of stuff, but you're starting to really kind of see what we call wall clouds, which there's one back here. It's hard to see on camera, but we got to put animals in the second half of the animal adventure, which you'll see in a minute. All right, so the other thing that we do at the house when these happen, we actually grab the big horses and bring them into the barn, just in case. Sometimes there's hail associated with storms and all that. I just talked to Lauren and she said, please go ahead and bring them in. Well, I'm glad I did that, because as I did that to bring the horses in, it actually started to hail. So, and sorry for the bad hair and backwards hat now, but now I'm soaking wet. All right, so we're actually standing on our front porch now because the storm's coming from the other way, so a lot of the rain, so I can stand back here and still be outside a little bit. But it's getting better out here. It's not. It's going to get worse. But that initial from light to dark is so drastic. It looks very intimidating. It just dropped in temperature a whole lot, and there's lightning. But when you get that drop, that means that the tornado activity kind of diminishes. It's the outflow of the storm, so it's a good thing. When you get that real hot humidity right before, bad. But this is good, so at least for us. Now, the other side, 20 miles on the other side of the storm, not so good, because it's still warm and humid over there more than likely. But in the rig, you really should have some form of weather notification. So like a weather radio, some battery banks that are charged, that you just kind of always have charged, but have a backup kit. You know, when a lot of us, as we travel on the road, we have first aid kits and we've got roadside assistant kits that have cones and flares and all kinds of stuff, but we don't think about the weather, and that's you. I mean, I get that those things are protecting you on the road if you have to stop, but if you're out there and a tornado hits, do you have what you need to be prepared? So something to that effect, and especially people that shoot videos like us as YouTubers and the things that we do, batteries are such a big deal. I'm not going to shoot video during that. I mean, I'd like to think I wouldn't shoot video. I'd probably shoot video, but I really need to do a better job myself of making sure that all of our battery banks are charged. All of those things are ready to go. Now, just like it's like a typical Texas rainstorm. What it did just a little bit ago, though, was it did hail. Just little mushy pea size, so not a big deal. That's another reason we bring the horses in. I had to put the camera down because I didn't want the horses to get spooked by it, and the barn's in a little bit of a disarray right now anyway because we're moving, so they kind of spooked at it already. But we do that, and the donkeys can go into the inside area of that other barn that we've used forever. So by no means is everybody in this area completely out of the woods. I think that's something that's important too to realize is storms, especially spring in Tornado Alley, they come through in waves. Just because a storm rolls through doesn't mean another one can't. So be diligent. I mean, these can be severe, and like today is a perfect example. We really didn't get much here. I mean, it hailed just a little bit. It's pouring right now outside, but we're back in the house because there's no reason to be out on the RV because there's just less potential of injury in the house than there is over there. Now, when we're full-timing, will I tell you that I'm going to sit in the bathroom at a campground or a rec center or a laundry room at a campground or a comfort station versus going back to my rig? I'm not so sure, but I'd be quick to go back there if I thought something was going to impact us. What it boils down to is your understanding of how these storms work. If you grew up in northern Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, you're used to these things, right? Tornado Alley, you're used to them. And so you get comfortable with understanding when it's time to go and when it's not. But other people, like my family is from Wisconsin as a whole, and for the most part, none of my other cousins or aunts and uncles really understand how these things work, especially in this area. Also, your area changes, right? So I know storms always have a tendency to come from, they slide from the northwest every single time, but they can move in all different directions, but they slide from one direction to the other. There's a lot that goes into it, but you have to take precautions. Safety matters in this scenario, and yeah. Well, it's we've switched to the phone. That's what we're resorting to now. I just wanted to show you a little bit of the aftermath. It's still actively raining, but for the most part, the storm is through us. You can kind of see it back behind me. There's a little bit of lightning and stuff, but you can see the amount of water we got. It's crazy. Lauren's almost here. I'm gonna go back inside, dry off a little bit, and then we're gonna switch over to the big camera from the inside. There you go, one more view. Don't anybody ever tell you a concrete pad's not a beautiful, beautiful thing. And just like that, it's pretty much through us. So it still looks really nasty back behind the rig, but this way, beautiful day. You still do have some bad weather out there. It's just pretty much DFW Airport and East. We are definitely still recovering from all of the rain. The pool is very full, and as you saw out by the rig, it is a complete swamp for a little bit, and that's how it is for a few days after one of these types of things. Also, the pool is now green instead of blue. That's a fun little repercussion of it. But the sun being up is great. It'll start drying us out. But Lauren's home, so let's go ask her. The deck is also wet. Let's go ask her to tell that story I told you about the tornado here when we first moved to the house. Plus, we'll get her take on a few things. All right. So I know you just got home and we're back to packing again.
Oh, yeah.
But with the tornado and all the fun stuff that's been happening around here, we decided to do a little tornado bonus video. Okay. So why don't you tell the story about when we first moved into the house, the one that skipped us?
The first one where we learned that we don't have tornado sirens here.
Yep,
That's
that one.
where we learned that. So it was like these storm chasers were sitting on the bridge that crosses the highway right where you turn. It's like a mile from our house. And that's also when we learned that if we make the news that it's never ever good because we're in a town this big. But yeah, so there was a tornado that came tracking right down the highway, right at that bridge where the storm chasers were sitting there waiting for it. And it briefly lifted up and we sat outside and basically watched the whole cloud go over us and touch right down at the exit just north of us. So it like hopped us. Boop. Yeah, thank goodness too. But yeah, that's where we learned that we don't have tornado sirens out here. And the best way is to, I guess, get out there and sit and watch it.
And Twitter.
As that sounds. Yeah, Twitter.
I mentioned the Twitter thing because we were out because we don't have alarms here.
Oh, that's also when we learned that DirecTV doesn't work in the tornado.
Yep. I also talked about why we have the antenna on the TVs now and how why. RVs have the Air 360 on them for the most part, at least ours does. And that's an important thing to have. So what are some of your main concerns about being in a mobile home, as the news likes to call it, but full timing in an RV given inclement weather?
I guess if the wind's strong enough, you're mobile at any point.
It's a plane.
Your house is a mobile home, you know, if the wind's strong enough. I think we have to pay more attention. I think we just have to be more aware, ultimately. Hi. Hello. Mishka wants to be on camera. So yes, ultimately, I think we just have to be a little bit more weather alert, weather aware. And then of course, because the slides like come in and out and everything, we have to pay attention to that because anything that moves and has a seam like that might be bound to.
Go ahead, keep going.
Anything that moves like that might be bound to leak.
So the other thing too is, I think if it's going to be severe enough, we might have to pull the slides in.
Sure.
Not all of them necessarily, because it does take up most of the space inside. But if we can if it's going to be bad rain and that kind of stuff, that we can go ahead and maybe just go to bed. Pull that slide in, get the pups up there with us. They can have the bathroom and that little hallway area and just kind of block off the rest. So
And make sure that we're not around like trees. We learned that from the Hanks. Make sure we're not around like trees or things that if they did succumb to the weather would be impacting us.
Yeah. Look above you.
Do you know why I have 2 VHSs of the movie Serendipity? Neither do I. But I do.
That's Independence Day.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Also probably mine, not hers.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this is just a little bonus video, kind of crime of opportunity with the storms that came through. Just got me thinking about it. I know you weren't home for most of it. She pulled up as it was kind of moving out. Lucky her.
Doesn't work.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. We'll be back to our normal schedule Sunday at 5 o'clock. We still have a video for there too. So until then, I guess stay safe out there if you're traveling and there's storms. And otherwise, bye, Mom.